The classical guitar has become much more accessible than it ever has been before. So in today's video, I want to look at the top 10 classical guitars for 2024, according to Guitar World magazine. Now, I wanted to do this video for a little while because Guitar World, as we saw from the past, is known for having not the best information out there for classical guitar. And what I don't want to have happen is somebody see this list and go ahead and pick one of the guitars off their list when all they want to do is play some good old Barrios and Bach. They've made this list super easy for us by breaking it down into 6 categories: the best overall, the best for gigging, the best flamenco, the best budget, the best playability, and the best high-end. So all we gotta do is see which guitars they put in each category and give our thoughts. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. The full article will be linked down below in the description, and let's get started. So their best overall guitar is the Taylor 12EN. So I'm guessing that N stands for nylon, I'm guessing E stands for electric, and I'm guessing the 12 stands for the model number of the guitar, somewhere in the mid to higher end range of Taylor guitars. I've played my own fair share of high-end Taylor guitars in the past, and I gotta say, they are pretty good, but that doesn't mean that I would go out and buy a Taylor as my nylon string classical guitar. So let's see what they say. They give the basic specs, such as it's a spruce top, it has a layered back and sides, it has a mahogany neck with an ebony fingerboard, a scale length of 225, and only 17 frets. A little suspicious, right? Which makes me think this is kind of a crossover guitar. Maybe not the best guitar overall, maybe, in my opinion, one of the least good guitars overall, because it's not really a classical guitar. I like how they have this section here that says reasons to avoid, and it says neck could be too narrow for some. They know the specs here are not what we want, but personally I would have liked to see this not even on their list at all. But let's move on. Coming in for the best gigging guitar is the Golden Multiac Encore guitar. Golden makes great electric nylon string guitars. My first thing is, I'm not sure which one they're talking about here. It looks like it's the one that's not what you want, which is the Golden Concert Classical. The Encore one isn't bad, but again, for the classical guitar list, I don't know why they picked the one model that isn't classical guitar, especially when Golden makes the Grand Concert, which is a hands down amazing electric classical guitar. It has awesome build quality, it has blendable guitar tones, it has excellent feedback rejection. All of those things are true, but I would say you want to do those things on the Grand Concert, which is the same thing, but it actually is built like a classical guitar. I like how their one downside is to avoid playing it if you want to play unplugged. Honestly, the Golden guitars, when I've played them unplugged, actually sound pretty good. They sound way better than you would expect them to. But that shouldn't really be a con for something that you know is going to be like that anyway. I think the big con would be that they put the wrong guitar here. Amazing guitar, best gigging guitar for sure. Get it if you can. Best flamenco guitar. So it seems weird that this is on the list because, as any classical guitar player and flamenco guitar player will tell you, they're almost two different instruments. They look very similar, but they're basically two different things. But they do put a good guitar here. They put the Cordoba F7 Paco Flamenco. So I'm guessing the Paco is for Paco de Lucia. It looks like a typical flamenco or classical guitar. It has a slim and comfortable body, which makes sense as it's supposed to be a flamenco guitar. Comfortable neck feel and lively and articulate sound. Now, I don't want to give too many opinions on this because I'm not a flamenco guitarist one bit. I couldn't tell you if these are good things for a flamenco guitar or not. From my own personal observations and experiences, though, I can say it sounds like they're on the right track here. So they tell us that it was based off as a tribute for the legendary Paco de Lucia, which makes a lot of sense. And let's see, it's not one-trick pony either. It can be great for classical standards, weird word to use, and jazz. I feel like they need to switch those. Great for classical and jazz standards. But anyway, it gives you fantastic separation, and it's still sitting around the only $500 price mark. Honestly, for $500, not bad. It says to avoid if you prefer traditional instruments. I feel like that should have been the con for the first two. It's lighter and narrower than a traditional classical, which is true, it's a flamenco guitar, and it features a dual action truss rod, which might put off some purists. I like how now they're caring about the purists, because the other two would probably, I don't know, really make a purist hate the guitar. A purist would probably not mind this guitar that much because it's closer to flamenco. Again, I don't know, maybe a flamenco purist would hate this guitar, but for me, doesn't seem that bad. Best on a budget, the Yamaha C42, an affordable, proper nylon string guitar by Yamaha. Alright, so, this guitar doesn't seem that bad. So in their description, they talk about how this guitar is a perfect transition from a student-size guitar and level guitar to a full-size guitar. And honestly, that's probably what I would say. Is it the next guitar you should get if you've been playing for quite a while? No, probably not. But if you're an adult getting into classical guitar for the first time, and you want something that will work, sound good, and not break the bank, honestly, not a bad choice. The con that they say is that avoid if you're an advanced player. If you already have a few classical guitars, it's unlikely to add anything to your collection. I might not even say that. I might say it's a good one to have around as a teaching guitar, as a beater guitar. It's not amazing. It's not bad. It's probably right where you want it to be for that kind of thing. So, not bad. Another good guitar on their list. Best for playability. A Washburn Festival EACT42S. I'm not really sure what the S stands for. Or the 42. Or the... any of it, actually. So it's another electric nylon classical crossover where it has a neck that is probably a little narrower than it should be. It has pickups in it that might not be so great. If you want a guitar with pickups, definitely go for one like a Godin or some other guitars that maybe they'll mention later, but definitely not this one. I like how one of the reasons to buy it is just that it looks unique. Reasons to avoid. It's not one for purists. Again, you would think that on this list they would be trying to appeal towards classical guitarists, so people who want to play classical guitar. I would, I guess, consider myself a purist because I play traditional classical guitars, like that back there. But I feel like they're using it in a slightly condescending way, which I don't like. I like how they try to sell this one as like a perfect transition from like the non-traditional classical guitar to the traditional classical guitar. It says, avoid if you like traditional instruments. The looks alone are probably enough to put off the purists here. Again, purists. I like how they're calling us out. But despite all of that, they say that this guitar plays not much differently than a traditional classical guitar. Personally, I might have to beg to differ. I'd have to see the guitar in person, but seeing its point is to be an in-between between the non-traditional and the traditional, it can't be that similar to the traditional. And at that point, just buy a traditional classical guitar. Don't go and buy something in between. Doesn't really make sense. That would be like saying I'm going to go from a non-weighted piano to a kind of weighted piano to a fully weighted piano. I'm not a pianist, but in my mind, even as someone who doesn't play piano, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Alright, the best high-end option. The Cordoba GK Pro Negra. Top shelf material from the classical guitar specialists. I gotta say, I would say that in terms of big brands, Cordoba is definitely the classical guitar specialist. They make tons of good guitars for the money. If somebody asked me my personal recommendation for a beginner classical guitar, I would probably hands down say C5. C5 all the way. It's accessible, it's not too much, and on top of that, it sounds good. All things you want in a guitar. I actually used to have a Cordoba GK Pro Negra, and for a gigging guitar, I thought it was great. Would I use it in a concert? Probably not, because it's not really what it's for. I feel iffy putting that on the list. It's a good guitar, but I don't know if it should be on the list for best classical guitars of 2024. Amazing guitar, but not quite for this list. I like all the things that they're saying. They're talking about the high specs in terms of the wood as well as the craftsmanship. And let me tell you, they are totally correct on that. For a factory-made guitar, this one is a huge step up from other factory-made Cordobas I've seen. But their one con is that you should avoid it if you're on a budget. Because of the build quality and because of the materials used, of course it's going to be more expensive than other guitars that you could find. But honestly, I think the con should be that it's just not a traditional classical guitar. It's very close, but it's not quite there. And I would say that might be a small con. But regardless, it is a great guitar. If you get one of these, you're going to be very, very satisfied. And then they have the more options, the ones that didn't make the list. I almost don't want to find out what these are because the ones that were actually on the list weren't all that impressive, so I can't even imagine the ones that didn't make the list. But coming in first of these is the Martin 000 C12 16E nylon. Funny thing is that Martin was actually one of the first inventors of the classical guitar, but they very quickly changed over to steel string and really dominated that field. Rightfully so, they do it incredibly well. But they're not known for nylon string guitars, and because of that, I'm very weary to see it on this list. It has a Sitka spruce top, back and sides are mahogany, the neck is select hardwood, seems kind of weird. The fingerboard is ebony, and it has a 26.44 scale, which is a little bit more interesting. And then it has 20 frets. That is unique in my opinion. So, the reasons to avoid, I like how they say, it's a Martin, a brand not known for classical guitars. But back in the day, they were. And it also says that there's plenty of excellent competition at that price. They talk about the bracing of the guitar, all the specs that you would probably want to know. Martin specs are not that good for classical guitar, in my opinion. They talk about the pickups and the pickup system in the guitar. Pretty cool, but probably what adds to the price point. And the big con is, again, avoid if you like traditional instruments. If you're about pure classical guitar construction, then you're not likely to find a lot of love here. At the end, they even say, however, it's clearly more of a crossover than a concert instrument for classical players. If you're a fan of Martin steel string guitars but want to sidestep into the world of nylon every now and then, this might be the guitar for you. I like how they're honest, but I feel like because of all of those reasons, it just shouldn't have been on this list. The Cordoba C7 CE. Cordoba, like I said, amazing guitar. I don't know why you need the CE though. I don't know why you need the cutaway electric model of this. They should have just put a Cordoba C7 on here and it would have beat out most of the guitars on this list, at least in terms of being a classical guitar. Back and sides are rosewood, mahogany neck, fingerboard, rosewood. All of these things make sense for a classical guitar. I like how they say you'll love the cedar top. It has a great preamp. Reasons to avoid, just that the tuners could be better. And yeah, a lot of the times on these factory-made guitars, they oftentimes cheap out on the tuners because it's something they have to invest more money into. And if most people don't notice it, not really worth their investment. Their one con is kind of weird. It says the design here is traditional through and through. So if you're looking for ultra-fast playability, it might be wise to spend your money elsewhere. Again, it's a classical guitar list, so this should be on the list, and that should not be a con. That should be a huge pro. It should be a pro that beats out all the other guitars that you guys put on this list. But let's keep going. Coming in at number 9 is the Yamaha Nx5. This guitar looks like something I don't want to play. It has a European spruce tops, walnut back and sides, pretty weird for a classical guitar, mahogany neck, ebony fingerboard, scale length 25.6, 24 frets. That's crazy because even my guitar back there only has 20 frets. It says the reason to buy it is it has a neck that steel string players will adore. That should be a reason not to buy it. High-tech electronics. Good positive if you like gigging. Feedback resistant. Another good positive if you like gigging. Reasons to avoid. Unplugged, it can't compete with a proper nylon guitar. Doesn't make me want to buy it. It makes me actually not want to buy it. The Nx5 is the ticket for performance and for the studio. It's slim, soft, C-shaped neck, is easier to get your hand around than a bottle of Bud. Everything they're saying is why it shouldn't be on the list. I feel like they're telling us what not to buy. An Ibanez GA5TCE. Performance ready, thin line that loves life in the spotlight. Again, thin line, not classical. I probably wouldn't want to put it on the list. It's a great value, onboard preamp, undersaddle pickup, and it looks great. Reasons to avoid. not the traditional classical sound. They say that you should avoid it if you prefer traditional classical tones with a spruce top, set belly, back and sides. This isn't the traditional classical tone that some players might expect, and therefore we should not buy it. Coming in at number 11, the Yamaha CG1182SF. It says an entry-level flamenco guitar that punches well above its weight. I'm sure this guitar is great. Again, I don't have too much understanding of flamenco guitars, so I don't want to put too much input on this, but it says it has a true flamenco tone, dynamics, authentic build quality, and solid Eagleman spruce top. And the only reason to avoid, they say, is if only the sides were solid side press too. Yamaha makes some good guitars. They make a lot of good things. And I'm not surprised that this flamenco guitar is probably equally as good as other things around the same price point. The only con they say is just avoid if you want a more pro level guitar. This is a beginner instrument, which means it lacks the tonal depth of some of the more expensive options here. Again, that's not really a con. You get what you pay for. If this guitar is worth the money, then go for it. If that's what's in your budget, go for it and upgrade later. You're getting a solid instrument for the price point. And finally, the last one, coming in at number 12, the Yamaha SLG200NW, also known as the Yamaha silent guitar, nylon string, wide neck. So first thing is, I like how they put the wide neck version on here. There's actually two versions of the Yamaha silent guitar with nylon strings. One that is a little bit thinner than a traditional nylon string guitar, and the wide, which is supposed to match the specs of a nylon string classical guitar perfectly. This guitar is great to play if you need something quiet, as well as if you want to amplify. From what I've heard, the amplification options on here are not the best, but I think they work, and it's not too bad. The reasons to avoid are it's not for traditionalists. Well, we could assume that by looking at the picture. They talk about in their description how the guitar really comes to life if you plug it into an amp. That's great. That's kind of what it's for, or to play quietly or with headphones. They say that the one con is to avoid if you don't want to play unplugged, which, in my opinion, is kind of the point. So not really a con. Honestly, something that I think is a good pro. It does what it's supposed to do. Take a quick look over here. This is the price points for all of the various guitars that we listed. I think it's just the top 10, but you can check if you want and let me know. Honestly, for some of these guitars on their list, I would not buy any of them. For the 500 price point, I would hands down say, go ahead and get a C5, save yourself some money, and get a guitar that's going to beat out most of the guitars on this list. For a guitar in the 1,000 range, I would say go ahead and go with a Kenny Hill, a studio, or lower level player model. These guitars, in my opinion, are the best guitars you can get for the money. They are well made, they sound good, and of course, being by a traditional classical guitar company, they're going to have all of the traditional classical guitar specs, which you should want. And as we get to the ones that are higher in the price points, in the $2,000 range, I would say again, go for a high-end Kenny Hill, Asturias, or Cordoba guitar. Those guitars in that price point are going to be pretty good and much better than anything they have on this list. Alright guys, that's this video. Thank you so much for watching towards the end. I wanted to make this one a little bit longer just to feel it out to see if people ended up sitting through the whole entire thing. And if you did, thank you so much. Despite the list not being all that solid, it was interesting seeing what they put and why. I don't agree with many of their options, and hopefully this video shows you that there are better options out there than the ones listed on sites like this. But either way, I will see you guys in the next video, and thanks so much for watching.